What's good, ladies and gents? Welcome to the MKO Pugilism boxing channel where we talk all things boxing. Remember to like and subscribe, hit the bell notification, put it on all so you can get notified the very second that we drop new content on this channel. So let's get into this one. So this past weekend we had the one of the biggest fights of the year, record attendance, 73,000 plus people in Arlington, Texas, AT&T Stadium for Canelo Alvarez versus Billy Joe Saunders. And yeah, this fight had a bit of anticipation behind it. A lot of people, great to see a crowd back in attendance. We had a bit of the theatrics before the fight, the whole Canelo show and his band, the mariachi. We had the anthems and all that before this fight. So leading into this fight, Canelo was definitely favorite. But everybody sort of, most fans sort of understood that Billy Joe does have a sort of chance of giving him trouble. That's what I was sort of saying before the fight. And, I fancied a Canelo points victory. That's what I thought the most likely outcome would be. I did turn out to get it wrong because Canelo managed to pull off a very, very good victory in there inside the distance. As the fight opened up, we had Canelo just poised as usual. First round was very cagey. Billy Joe sort of boxed well. He tried to establish his jab. It was a very close round overall because you had Canelo not doing very much in that opening round. He was, you could tell he was sort of feeling Billy Joe out. Billy Joe himself didn't really do all that much. He was slightly busier and, he was just sort of getting into his rhythm. Lots of straight shots. There wasn't really that much between them in round one, but for me, I sort of felt that Billy Joe edged it. I felt that he sort of edged round one, just based on being a little bit more active, and that was it really for me. The activity of Saunders sort of sold it for me. Canelo was very poised, and he was sort of looking for the body very early on. But I just felt in that particular round, Saunders was just a little bit more effective and just did that bit more. Rounds sort of going forward, 2, 3. I think those were sort of Canelo rounds where Saunders was cool. He was doing his thing, but Canelo was just able to set his feet, and although Saunders was quite elusive, Canelo was always able to land these power shots, and he was landing, while Saunders was landing punches, you could just tell that there was a massive difference in the power of the punches, and Canelo would land these body shots, these deadly sort of hooks to the body and everything. Saunders was able to avoid some of them, but Canelo was able to land, and I think he was a little bit more effective in those rounds, sort of 2, 3, and that, and as the fight wore on, Billy Joe was able to sort of come back into it, because I felt round one was Saunders for me, but it was close. 2, 3, 4, going into those sorts of rounds, I think I sort of gave them to Canelo. Canelo was effective. He's got this method of just putting pressure on his opponent with his feet, moving forward, making you work while he just sort of watches what you do, and it's like he's doing calculations in the ring and working you out, working your pattern out, and that's what he was kind of doing to Saunders in leading sort of into the middle rounds. I say first third of the fight leading into the middle rounds. Canelo was doing his little calculations, countering well with good body shots, and you could really tell that Saunders was feeling these punches. these were very hurtful shots to the gut that Canelo was landing, and you could tell he was the guy out of the two of them throughout this fight. Canelo was a guy who was in the sort of first, second gear. He wasn't having to exert himself much. Canelo was boxing, as I like to say, within himself for a lot of this fight. Sometimes he was a bit careless, he was a bit reckless because he would throw these sort of wide hooks and Saunders would be able to make him miss. So sometimes he was a bit wide, he was a bit reckless, but for the most part, very cerebral, just following Billy Joe around, trying to cut off the space and everything. But I found that as we got to sort of 4, 5, 6 and set going on, Billy Joe started coming into the fight quite a lot more. He started landing more. He was able to get a bit of a second win and a bit of a rhythm in the fight. So for me, I kind of had Billy Joe edging a few of these rounds, sort of, I would say sort of 6. I think it was 5, 6, and 7, or 6 and one of the other. But I found that Billy Joe started to sort of edge the fight a little bit more, going into those middle rounds. He started to outbox Canelo a little bit, put his hands down certain times, and he was impressive in those middle rounds. Billy Joe was definitely impressive to me. He was able to do the rare feat of make Canelo miss and then make him pay with a few shots. I suppose in hindsight he could have been maybe a little bit busier in those rounds. He could have been a little bit busier, do a little bit more. But I believe what it probably was is that he had felt the power of Canelo, felt how hard he hits, and obviously he didn't want to stay inside with him too long. And I found Saunders' style in this fight, very effective. But there was this mistake that myself and Kev, we watched it together, we noticed, and that was that he would kind of be there in front of Canelo, try and land a few shots, and he would do this mistake of sort of leaning forward with his head, and his head would go right, he'd do what he needed to do, and then he'd kind of lean forward after throwing shots or after avoiding shots, and he'd have his head in this vulnerable position right in front of Canelo, and Canelo was able to sort of take advantage of that and capitalize with uppercuts sometimes. There are many times Saunders would do that, have that success, and lean forward with the head a little bit, and he'd be able to sort of be quick enough to get away from Canelo's counters. But many a time he was doing this thing, and even when he's having success, fighting to his rhythm, he was still making that mistake, and that mistake became very key, of course, as we know, leading up to the finish. So as we were in sort of around 7, I felt that Billy Joe might have even been ahead in the fight. I didn't really score it round by round. I was so sort of engrossed in watching the fight. But I remember at the time of watching it, I thought that Saunders may have been ahead, maybe by a round, maybe by 2 rounds, because I just preferred what he was doing some of the time, and I felt that with Canelo sometimes it wasn't that much coming from him. So I kind of had Saunders about a round up, maybe 2 rounds up, as we sort of went towards the 8th round, and of course the 8th round was the pivotal round where it had been going back and forth, and end of round 7, I thought, good performance by Billy so far. Billy Joe was confident, he was boasting, he was showboating at certain times, and we then went into the 8th round. Then Billy come into it with confidence, but as we saw in sort of especially middle rounds, Canelo was beginning to land and beginning to hurt Billy Joe with certain shots, and he was even nodding his head to certain shots, and And in this 8th round, we had the pivotal moment where Billy Joe was landing shots, coming into punching range with Canelo, and then he was doing this, ducking his head, like moving his head sort of forward and down. And with a man like Canelo, who's technically so good with his punch delivery and punch placement, the inevitable happened. He made the same mistake again round 8. So I think it was he landed a shot, and then he sort of done his thing, moved his head, and then he moves right into punching range. And this time Canelo clocked exactly where his head was going to be. As he leans down, Canelo, wham, beautiful uppercut. And it was like as soon as that uppercut landed, Canelo just knew he had him. You could see immediately there was effect immediately as he landed that uppercut. He landed that uppercut. You could say Billy Joe winced. You could see on impact it almost dented his eye or whatever, and eye socket, sorry. And you could see as Billy Joe comes up, he just puts his earmuffs on and tries to move around the ring, but just completely goes into survival mode, into defense mode, because you could see, like, straight away as that punch landed, it immediately became black. It immediately was basically closed just off of that one punch, and that showed the power of Canelo and the way he was able to know where Saunders' head was going to be, and just calculate it all and just put that uppercut right there in the right place, right time. Just showed, a difference in levels. And obviously Canelo won that round very well. He was whooping up the crowd, raising his hands and everything. And so he won that round very clearly. Saunders went into his shell and just sort of boxed to survive for the remainder of the 8th. They both go back to the corner. Canelo, I believe he tells his trainer in Spanish, tells Reynoso, this is it, it's over, he ain't coming out. And then we see a bit of commotion in the Saunders corner. His cornerman, just waves it off and everything. And unlike some fights, you do see, fighters protesting, but you could see Saunders very subdued, very sort of at peace with being pulled out. He wasn't protesting. He was just sitting there on the stool, and he was just quiet. You could see there was a lot of sadness in his face there. So anyway, that was the conclusion of it. Canelo wins by stoppage. Saunders retires on the score. I think he was retired by his corner or whatnot. So yeah, anyway, let me know your thoughts on the fight. How impressed were you by Canelo? And until next time, this is MKO Pugilism, over and out. Catch you on the next one.